Hey, welcome to RVAsec. Come on, you ain't coffee, right? So this is really cool. So I get a call from, I actually got an email from Jake, and he's like, hey, G-Mark, we've never met, but would you come to a keynote for me? And I'm thinking, sure, why not? Because it's really cool. Richmond's a nice place. I got some friends here I'm hoping to catch up with. So when you do keynotes, it's a little bit different. I'm trying to think, now what am I going to talk about, right? Because keynotes are going to be different. You're not there going to talk about your pet project. I'm not going to tell you all about my little startup company and all the fun I'm having with that, although it'd be fun to talk about it offline. But that's not what a keynote's about. It's not about your pet project. Hey, look at the little thing I'm building up there in the lab, and I've only been working on it for so many months, and maybe it's going to come out. But that's not a keynote. It's got to be about the big picture. It's putting things into context, looking at what it is that we are either as a community or as a conference or as an event, and trying to stitch that all together and do it in a way that we kick things off and we make something so we all get you thinking about something interesting and useful. Anybody was here for Marcus's talk a couple years ago? Okay, how come there's fewer hands who were raising their hands for that than said that they were here for that conference when Jake was asking about it? Okay, what kind of speaker is Mark? What does he talk about? Come on, people! Marcus, right? He's the world's greatest optimist, right? No, my goodness. Marcus got to be one of the grouchiest guys I know. I love the guy. I've known him for 20 years. But reality is tough. So I've had a chance to do a lot of keynotes. And from time to time, I'll get a call from other stuff. So I apologize if I left somebody off the list. But this is, again, another real privilege to go ahead and be part of this. But every talk, if you do keynotes, there's going to be sudden death. Because you just might screw it up. And then everybody says, hey, that G-Mark guy was doing really well to that nasty thing in RVAsec. And thank you very much, by the way. The speakers, they were awesome for us. They took us out bar hopping last night, all these beer tasting. Really good way to prepare for a 9 o'clock talk. At least I didn't get off a plane from London like our other keynote did yesterday. But you also want to be thought-provoking. Get you thinking about stuff. Because in a way, our community is all about coming up with great ideas and implementing them. We're not about just grinding it out. This is not a sheet metal or a ship fitters union where we're talking about going ahead and doing that stuff. We're thinking, we're working with our brains. So I'm trying to get you to think about stuff, some new ideas. We talked about new relationships. When you go to a con, do you have an objective to make new friends? If you're making contacts, do so. We're all part of a community, and that community transcends just the geography of Richmond. It goes nationally, and it goes internationally. And if you have a chance to travel around and go to a lot of conferences, you realize that what we are is some big global community of security experts. You want some new insights. You want to look at things a little bit differently, because let's face it, as we look at things the way we've always looked at them, we're going to get pretty much the same results. And so we want to bring a new perspective. Now, I've been doing this a while because I know someone's out here going to reverse engineering ages and things like that, but when I was born, wheat pennies were still being made. And when you got a dollar bill, it was blue seal, it was a silver certificate. I mean, gee whiz. We only had 48 stars on the American flag. I mean, this was so long ago, the Pentagon only had 3 sides, okay? They hadn't built the other 2 yet. And so, as you watch the industry grow up, you see things change. My first full-time security job, now it's cybersecurity, but before that was what? And it was InfoSec and then computer security. We have all the different names for it, but I've always kind of liked the word InfoSec because that's kind of locked in years ago. My first full-time job, for real, was back in New York in 1976, our bicentennial year, and I got a whopping $2.10 an hour working for the state of New York, plugging all of the security holes in all the systems that we had punched as high school kids. Now, granted, this was probably one of the first really good ideas. Punch a bunch of holes in a system and then get hired and paid to plug them. And this was long before the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and quite honestly, it was an entirely different mindset. You didn't break into stuff to steal or to do damage, just because you could. You got the door open, you said, hey, look, we're in our neighbor's house. All right, let's close it and relock it because we like our neighbor. Today, it's a little bit more aggressive out there. So I got to watch our industry grow up. And that is a really fun thing to be able to do. We have these Apple computers. You just hear about that in the press the other day? Somebody had turned one of these things into a recycling bin because their husband died, and they just, it's all computer junk. It's all for like $200,000. And then their policy, when you turn in old computers for recycling, they'll give back half to the donor if they can find who it is. So if they can't find who it is, here's a good social engineering thing. Yes, that was me. But prior to that, the thing that inspired that was my first computer. It was an Altair 8800. And what happened is Steve Jobs and Woz looked at it and they said Apple, and Bill Gates looked at it and they said Microsoft, and well, we looked at it, we just took it to a high school assembly to make it play music. So it's a different world. Also, roll the clock forward, less than 20 years ago, the two-letter .com domains, how much do you think you can get for one of those right now? Yeah, you talk about prime real estate in the internet. Guess what? I wrote a little script to go through and check all the ones that were out there. Less than 100 of them had been registered. Think about that. This is a brave new world where okay, someone got that one, okay, but a B was open, a C, a D, a E. You get the point, right? Or do you? Because remember what I said about what the community was like back then. You didn't take stuff, you didn't hoard it, you didn't grab it, there was no commercialization. We looked at the internet as a shared resource. And I was thinking of getting 007.com for my company, National Security Corporation. Why? Because you can't trademark a number. But you know what? I'll get to it. And eventually, I didn't get one of those. What's that? Round 2. I never got around to it. So what happened is, about 6 to 12 months later, the internet rush began. And I'll tell you what, if I grabbed up a whole bunch of those names, and by the way, that this was in an era that was BNS, before Network Solutions, because domains were free. You didn't even have to shell out the 35 bucks. But the concept of squatting or domain hoarding, nobody would ever do that. Okay? So what happened? I felt like I was in California. It was like 1937. You're prospecting for gold. You do cool stuff. You find really neat things, but never get around to staking the claim. And what happens? You get overrun like Custer at Little Bighorn. And now you go out there, look at the vendor space, and it always amazes me every year. There's more vendors doing pretty much the same thing that they were doing 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, just with a different twist on it. You'd think we'd be saturated, but no, we're not. It keeps going. And I'm thinking, I could have been a contender. You know, it would have been awesome. I could have been this guy, too. Oh, yeah, maybe not. So, never mind. So, the point is, today I get to live down in Florida. We're the land of hanging chads. I mean, blue hairs driving 45 miles an hour in the left turn with the turn signal on in the lane. Oh, yeah, if you ever watch an episode of Cops, I guarantee you that at least one of those guys with no shirts walking around with handcuffs comes from Pinellas Park, Florida, which is the next town over. Okay, I don't know why they breed over there, but they sure make a whole lot of people for TV. And, of course, my welcome to Florida gift, as you can see, let's go ahead and do a biopsy on you because that sun's not working with your Irish skin. Hey, my ancestors grew up in bars. You know, there was no sun in there. So you do it the best you can. But it was a different era. We programmed and we submitted a job deck in punch cards. And anybody heard my talk, like a hacker looks at 50, I used to hand these punch cards out with little messages on the back. You got your output in fan fold paper. And what happens, our programmers look different. A lot of people know about Amazing Grace, right? Admiral Grace Hopper. I had a chance to speak on the same platform as she did, because many years ago when I went to work for Booz Allen, I had a lady. She was old. She must have been 40-something. Wow, it's amazing how perspectives change. And she gave me a really good piece of advice back in 1985. She said, G-Mark, speak every chance you get. Okay, so I started doing that. And one of my first talks with Admiral Hopper, and she was the keynote, and I was just a warm-up speaker, but I remember her pointing her unfiltered Camel cigarette at me, looking at me over her horn rim glass, and said, young man, I want you to make me a promise. It's like, yes, I mean, how do you say no to a legend? I want you to promise me that you will write an article on the value of information, because the information on computers someday will be worth more than the computers themselves. And companies will start listing information on their balance sheets. This is 1986. Wow, what a visionary lady. But who's this other person here? Nobody knows, do we? That's Margaret Hamilton. She wrote all the code for the Apollo 11. That's her stack of printouts. By the way, there was no way to go ahead and check it. You didn't have everything. It was hardwired. It was literally stitched into the core memory, ones and zeros. You talk about not being able to go ahead and modify your code on the fly. And she built in robustness into the protocols and stuff like that, so when there started to be problems, there were error trapping and the mission kept on going. But back then, programming was literally considered, in some cases, a woman's job. Because what are you doing? Oh, programming means stitching different things. It's a fancy form of knitting little cores. It's like, come on, you go back and you look at World War II and you look at the efforts for breaking the Enigma. Mostly women were doing that. But, oh yeah, am I supposed to talk about something related to security? Yeah, squirrel. So, whoever's got their CISSP, or their SSCP, or their CEH, or their MOUSE, okay, we're all in that level. Okay, So remember the follow the bouncing ball. This is your reminder. This is your quiz. What are your layers of your network? Layer 1 is what? Physical. Ta-da. No, layer 2 is data. Layer 3. Network layer. We're talking about, I heard link layer, but no, we're talking about the OSI model. Number 4. Transport. Number 5. Session. Number 6. Presentation. Layer 7 is the application layer. Ta-da! We're done. Congratulations. You get a CPE for that. Stick that in your certification and smoke it. So what happens with this stuff? The problem is, remember Tom Lehrer? This is like a lost thing. He was the guy who put the periodic table of the elements to music. Okay, go Google him now. He's gone, but it's fun stuff. So OSI model ends at layer 7, but our jobs don't end at layer 7. Security doesn't end at layer 7. Businesses and organizations, they don't end at layer 7. What happens is they go beyond layer 7 to layer 8. And that's what I wanted to talk about. Because they say as a keynote, you get to kind of think of whatever you want to do. And what is layer 8? It's politics. Layer 8 controls everything below it, and you know that. You know that's true. It's just that we don't talk about it. Why? Because it's outside of our sector. Okay, it's in the maintenance sector. We don't see stuff over there. We have office politics. Everybody gets along so nicely in this world. But for the most part in the security world, what happens? We tend to, squirrel, right? Anybody have a little bit of problem with this? Anybody know somebody has got a little bit of problem with this? It is actually probably one of the things that let us do what we do and do it well. Because no rational, sane person is going to track as many different variables as we do and keep them all up in our head. So this is actually an asset. But it's tough because in addition to that also comes more of an introverted personality. Not everybody. But in general, if you look at our community and we try to find out who are the ones that we often see around us. Some may be hygienically challenged. I was kind of wondering when I was sitting over there, like nobody was sitting within about 3 rows of me. It's like, oh yeah, no, I'm okay. And in some cases, we have people who have almost kind of checked out of society, but they're absolutely brilliant. And so the key is find these brilliant people. They become part of our community, and we love them, and we care about them. But the thing is, they're not well suited for getting outside of this technology zone. Because this is our comfort zone. Technology is where we love it. Things are logical. They're predictable. It's where we are happiest, right? And so if we're happy here, and we get the logic and the predictability and things like that, what's wrong? Why don't we just continue to just stay inside the network, make our entire career as first-person shooter games where we're living with inside some business, and somebody else takes care of everything else. And many of us do that with our careers. Yet I see more and more people wanting to do startups, and that's fun. I've done a few. There is a group that's funded by the Commonwealth of Virginia called Mach 37, and they provided me some funding. And they have rolling admissions. Google it if you're interested. But the point is you can kind of get out of that zone. But when you leave your comfort zone, it gets a little bit iffy. Now here's the thing about that. I submit you don't learn anything inside your comfort zone. There's no growth there because you're not challenging yourself. You're doing what you're used to doing. You're doing what you like to do. And as a result, you're not trying something else. And I'm suggesting if you want to go ahead and get into layer 8, you're going to have to try something else. But in general, we don't care. We let somebody else handle the politics. In fact, we tend to look down on politics, right? That's beneath us. We're not going to play that game. But the reality is it's above us. It's layer 8. It's controlling our environment. It's controlling everything, our resources, our access, even our people and their jobs and the money you make and things like that. But we don't care, right? I mean, if this is DEF CON, I get a resounding response on this one. Honey Badger doesn't give a, and it's Virginia, so we're introverts, so we don't say that. It can be edited out of the tape, don't worry. But we don't give a darn, right? Okay, we'll go ahead and keep it PG for the masses. But the world then sees us as little ponies. Because we're not engaging, we're little rainbows coming out of various orifices, saying, oh wow, life is good, life is happy. Everything is awesome. And that's not the real world that's out there. We're living in a little shell. Because Strother Martin will tell you, failure to get layer 8 means he's a failure to communicate. And if you fail to understand that, you're going to be doomed to repeating a lot of unpleasantness over and over and over again. And this is nothing new. This has been going on for generations, hasn't it? Think about it. Ancient Rome, ancient Greece, you go back and you read Plato, read Aristotle and things like that, you find out that the politics is there. Mankind hasn't really changed much in 2,500 years. Our technology has. The way we organize as a society has, and a lot of that has to do with technology, but people are still people. And they're petty and they're political and they care about themselves and they might care about you as long as it works for them. And we all think that we're better than that, but when push comes to shove, it rarely ever happens that way. And the crucible that we put people through in politics, then you look at the difficulty, even going back to Abraham Lincoln's day, and all the things you read about, all the things he ran for office and didn't get elected, and didn't have this and this problem, and eventually got shot. I mean, this poor guy, he had all kinds of trouble. Okay, it's like, oh, wait, that's the wrong president. Sorry, I got my slides mixed up. But there's no escape from politics. Resistance, if you will, is futile. We've heard that before. But this is not a Borg, or is it? What happens? What was the whole idea with the Borg? You get assimilated. Yes, you keep your individual identity, but you become part of the collective. And isn't that really what's happening to us in a society? As we look at what's out there and we look at the direction we're going, are we becoming more and more connected or more and more disconnected to our political leadership? Are we seeing a government that's more responsive or less responsive to the will and the needs and the interests of the people? So what I'm not saying about layer 8 is how to be a politician. This guy is speaking tomorrow. In my opinion, this guy is uber-elite when it comes to political politics, okay? If you look at his biography, chairman of the Democratic National Committee, campaign manager, co-manager for Bill Clinton, manager for Hillary Clinton, now governor of the Commonwealth. This guy gets it in spades. And my understanding, because I no longer live in Virginia, I used to, is that this person has really kind of figured out how to go ahead and work the program so that it's not totally one-sided. Because when I think about politics, I go back and I think of my old Pink Floyd songs, you know, and the Animals and stuff like that. And anybody who's ever been a Pink Floyd fan understands that there's a lot of cool stuff in there. And you think about it, it's a little bit cynical, but maybe it's a little bit realistic. You know Richard Thiem? Cool guy. I've known Richard for 20 years now. This year will be my 20th DEF CON, and it will also be his. And so we've hung out together, we've spoken at different events together, we get together. Just a really, really fascinating person. And he's got a huge book which you can buy. It's on UFOs. Did a lot of research on it. He's absolutely convinced that the government has suppressed all kinds of information. And his quote that he had put in one of his books, and he said this actually came from one of the spies, is deception. It consists of illusion, misdirection, and ridicule. But the greatest of these is ridicule. Let me offer you one word modification to that observation. And it's still true. If you look at how whole politics work today, it's the same thing. There's a lot of deception going in there. And if you think about it, remember Sun Tzu? Anybody ever read The Art of War? What does he say at the beginning? All warfare is based on deception. Now, I would suggest that it's not about ridicule, but if we talk about ridicule, I think Hillary should volunteer her email server for the DEF CON Forensics Challenge this summer. And we'll see what can come out of it. But not to make sure, not to look like I'm partisan, I said, okay, how about this? This is our new thing, you know, not George Bush, George W. How about Jeb, third time's a charm? And a friend of mine pointed out, I said, do you realize he wrote his book and he called it Third Time's a Charm? I go, seriously? I thought this was a good joke. And it's his book he picked on it. Well, think about it. Ridicule is one of the methodologies that is used to attack. Okay, now we're facing all kinds of attacks in our community. Anybody been to Hacker Jeopardy at DEF CON? Okay, as you probably recognize me, I get to be the MC for that. We're under phenomenal pressure to be politically correct. It's like, seriously? Hacker Jeopardy is the least politically correct thing out there. I don't know how in the world I found that I ended up running it. I worked with it with Wynn for like 15 years. And all of a sudden, Wynn decided to retire just as the winds of change were coming. And now what happens is, hey, let's sit around and get really bombed on stage. 18 beers in 50 minutes, pretty good. Let's go ahead and do this special thing with the double jeopardy with Vanna, which we're not going to show here, of course. And of course, we don't want to screw it up. And so all these elements are now going to become victims, potentially, of political correctness. Because we can't do that stuff anymore. We can't have fun. So if you get a wrong answer, we make you go stand in the corner. And we give you milk and cookies instead of beer. What's happening? I feel like Garrison Keillor here. We're going to have our little thing at Lake Hackerbegon. It's changing. The winds are changing. And so if we don't understand it, we're going to just become blown around by those winds. But what layer 8 is and means to us is our attack surface. We look at our attack surface as it comes to networks, and we kind of get that, and applications, and we get that, and operating systems, and mobile devices, and on and on and on. But part of the attack surface are humans. Okay, the wetware, people go after that. There's also executives who just don't get security. The pointy-haired boss from Dilbert. And we all kind of work with them, and they worked for them in the past. And we swear we'll never become one of them, but yet somehow that works its way out. Vendors try to influence you, and of course they're going to push for whatever product they have, and they want you to see the world their way. There's some in legislation, Rockefeller-Snow, which failed a couple times, thank goodness, because it was going to regulate our industry. How do you feel about the federal government telling you how to do your job as a cybersecurity professional? Do you want to be regulated by the federal government? I don't know. My mom did taxes for years. When the IRS decided to go and register all the taxpayers and she had to get fingerprinted and had to go through all this stuff, she said, screw it, I'm done. All right, so now she's retired. She retired in her 70s. She was doing it for a bunch of little old ladies just to help them out. And the concept that you had to go through all of that to get officially approved because of one or two bad apples was horrible. Now we're looking at Aaron's Law, trying to go ahead and reform as a result of Aaron Schwartz, and most of us know what happened to that poor young man, about the fact to say that, hey, there's something a little bit wrong with our legal system. The way our laws are written back in the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986 and some of the other things really, really, really need to be updated. Layer 8 is about awareness. It's about going beyond just seeing stuff to understanding them. And once I understand it, I can comprehend it. When I comprehend it, I can come up with a strategy. I can start to actually go take action and deliver on results. This is not a spectator sport. This is a get in there and make stuff happen and bang it around. So what does it have to do with you? I mean, why think about it? Here's how we view ourselves, right? Oh, we are the Sith Lords of the Internet. We do amazing stuff. Everybody quivers in our presence. You want to know, though, if we don't influence layer 8, what we are? These guys. We got a little bit of an image problem here, and this is how we're seen, because we are not out there making stuff happen. So I submit that you have an obligation that transcends just yourself. Okay, it's nice to be self-interested, but if all society were all about self-interest, we wouldn't get much done, would we? So we have to go ahead and think about something. Do we care about our career? Yeah, we care about careers. Money? Yeah. Who wouldn't want a little bit more money? Power? Well, that's kind of layer 8 stuff, but yeah, it's not so bad. We should care about our profession, right? Shouldn't we all unite and somehow become this great unified voice out there that's talking about security and we solve the problems of humanity? Nah, screw it. It's all about money, right? And so what I see is people hopping jobs every couple of years. Hey, you get more money, get more money, get more money. It's ridiculous the amount of money you can get paid in our career profession today. And here's the thing. People think it's going to go on forever. It may not, because change happens. The future is disruptive, and it's not always what we think it would be. I'll tell you what, 1999, if you were a COBOL programmer, you were rocking, right? You were making a ton of money because of Y2K. And by February of 2000, at your new job, you're asking people, would you like fries with that? Because you are absolutely obsolete overnight. We have to think about discontinuous change. But if you're only in it for the money, I think you're missing something. Because we have something, Latin, voco is calling. What is your calling? Your purpose is not a job, it's not a task, it's not a career. It's what is it we want to do. I have taxi drivers, because I fly all over, literally all over the world, but I go to places, the guy says, what do you do? I do computer security. I like to get into computer security. How do I get into computer security? Like, dude, you're driving a taxi, and there's nothing wrong with driving a taxi. I get it. Some people drive taxis to go ahead and make a little bit of money off hours so they can pay for their college degree. But some other people are driving a taxi because it's a way to make money and it doesn't require learning a whole lot of new skills. And I said anybody can be a success in this career. It's just as easy as being a professional football player. What do I mean by that? You need to have some raw talent and you need to work on it for years. You got to get really, really good at it. And even then, it's tough to break into the professional ranks. Yeah, you can get a job and make some money, but if you want to be like some of these elite folks that you see out there that are out there, that's tough to do. It's like public speaking. People say, like, how do you get to go out and get paid to be a speaker? I say, do it for free for 15 years. Yeah, that was my in the trenches before finally they had asked me to speak at some conference out in California, and I think I was between jobs or something. I didn't have a client, and I didn't have the money to pay for it, because before that, my company would always have me go out there, and I'd chill for the company. I said, I can't make it. Well, we need you. You're the best speaker last year. Yeah, well, thank you. I said, but I can't make it. We'll pay you. And I go, what? There's money here? And it turned out, wow, how about that? How about music? Who here can be a professional musician? I took piano lessons from my grandmother. She taught for 75 years. God bless her. She taught piano until her 90s. She went to her 75th high school reunion, class of 1910. She was the only one there. But there were 50th and 40th and other thing. They asked her if she would play a recital, and at the age of 93, she played a half-hour recital on the piano. Amazing, amazing lady. But then, if I had stuck it with my piano lessons, what? I'd be sitting in the lobby of some hotel looking for dollar bills. So be careful what you pick as your primary calling, because things happen so much, you got to be dedicated to lifelong learning. And I said this for a number of years, and I even stuck it on the back of my business card. My corollary to Moore's Law. Half of what you know about security will be obsolete in 18 months. And if you think about it, and the rate of change and the way that things come out there, there's probably something to that. So if this is going to work, security has to be a magnificent obsession. This has to be something you would do without getting paid for it. Something you would do for 15 years without getting paid for it? Wow, that's nuts. But that's sometimes what it takes. And if security is that obsession, you don't care. You're doing what you want to do, and they just happen to pay anyway. That rocks. That's the best job in the world. I don't drag myself out of bed on Monday morning. It's like, whoa, what do I get to do now? It's not weird. It's true because I found my calling. I found what I love to doing. Because if it's not your obsession, you're just along for the ride. Okay? And you don't get to drive. Now, I got this clip. I said, wait a minute, does this look like anybody to you? Tell me, is it just me, or does it look like this guy? I mean, I thought like, yeah, good old Jack. So, help wanted, we need a leader. We need somebody to step forward. And leadership is interesting because I've had all kinds of opportunities. As a retired Navy captain, I saw lots of things in the military. I had the privilege to be the commanding officer of the Center for Naval Leadership for a couple of years. 70,000 students, 180 instructors who were in leadership training throughout the whole United States. And that was a big responsibility. And it's kind of cool to be the person who shapes the direction of leadership training for something as big as like the United States Navy. Wow, that's cool. But that's a privilege. You never sit back and say, whoa, look what I did. It's like, that's a service that we did. And so what we need some role models. Remember Spartacus, who kind of led the revolution of the slaves? We're going to go ahead and overthrow the slavery of hackers and security professionals, right? And there's our Pink Floyd, The Animals, if you remember that album. If not, go stream it and listen to it. We're going to take it over. But if we're not slaves, what are we? Maybe we need to go ahead and overthrow an unjust layer 8 that is suppressing us. It's making us work but not giving us the benefits of our work. There are role models out there. Or wait a minute, maybe we're just supposed to be in charge in the first place, right? We're uber elite. We're hackers. It is our birthright to be in charge. Whatever model we pick, we have to pick our new leader, Hackatus, whatever it's going to be. You know, because it's politics, we ought to pwn that too. Pwn all things, right? Why don't we pwn layer 8? We're going ahead, and Travis, you know, I saw his face dancer out there. And if you ever, Travis is a really cool guy, brilliant man. And we look at some of the other inventions out there. We pwn almost every object out there. Why aren't we going after layer 8? We ought to be thinking about trying to get at that next layer. Because if we don't, As Ben Franklin said, if we don't hang together, we shall surely hang separately. And right now, I don't see that unification that we have in our community that allows us to do more than get blown around by the winds of change as we get distracted by squirrel and people throw money at us, and we somehow think that we're doing a pretty good job at what we're doing. We need to do better. We have to develop an influence. We have to start influencing at the layer 8, which goes beyond IT security, beyond IT. And it goes into society as a whole. Because as we look at the Internet of Things, I don't know about you, but that looks like 1997 all over again. Okay, Bill Cheswick, his description of the Internet, hard crunchy shell, soft chewy center, and that's exactly where we're going in. We want to develop awareness. We want people to go ahead and get this stuff. And this is more than just your mandatory 60 minutes a year security awareness training. We want to get in there, we want to play the game. We want to play the game to win, because you can also play and lose. And it's a higher stakes game out there. And when you play high stakes games, the danger is that bad things can happen. Because politics, layer 8, is not a gentleman's sport, if you would allow me to use the term. It's full contact. It is mean, it is nasty, it is vicious. It is about lies and rumors and innuendos. It is about going ahead and getting in there and throwing mud and see what sticks. And as I learned from a menu in a po' folks restaurant many years ago, there's a little saying on it that said, never wrestle with a pig. You just get dirty and the pig likes it. And isn't that kind of describing American politics today? But we've got to go ahead and toughen up and take a couple of the hits. Because otherwise, we could be playing for very, very big stakes. There are organizations out there that are stealing information. We know it. We know the theft of stuff that's going on. What if we get to the point where we end up facing something seriously, like a full-blown war? You don't think we're in a cyber war already? Hello, McFly? Yeah. There's a whole lot going on. It's all taking place in cyberspace, but it doesn't make the headlines. Because it's not really cyber terrorism, because that's a conflict. What do I mean? Terrorism is traffic and adrenaline. It's when you see a building go down or a train blow up or somebody get shot or beheaded or whatever. That makes the news. But networks, server administrators being up till 3 in the morning rebuilding servers, that doesn't make national news. Okay? It's all in the background. It's not as visible. Now this guy, Karl von Clausewitz, who is the West's equivalent of Sun Tzu from the East, he's a Prussian general, and he wrote a book, Vom Kriege, on war. And what he stated almost 200 years ago is that war is a continuation of politics by other means. Yeah, and we understand that. And so politics is tough and it's dehumanizing. And we have to go ahead and take shots when we don't want to take the shots. And we want to go ahead and recognize we're going to be wrestling with pigs, and we're going to get mighty dirty, and you're going to have to not learn to love it. You're going to have to go ahead and at least tolerate it. But if you only tolerate it and don't love it, it's not a passion. And so you got to find someone who can go off and do that. Because these days are over. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, the old Frank Capra movie, is fiction. And it would be great to be that way. But what we have today is the Lord of the Flies, where without any direct control over things, things evolve to the basest, lowest level. And whether it's on a whole little island with kids try to organize themselves, or we look at our office politics, or we look at our corporate politics, or we look at our state or regional or national politics. It all becomes like that. And we as humans are going to continue to fight and fight and fight with each other until somebody else takes over. All right? Hey, we're Skynet. We'll be in charge. And isn't science fiction full of these stories and warnings about what could potentially go wrong? We're worried about China, the big boogeyman over to the east. Now, People's Republic of China, what 1.3 billion people plus, had been isolated from the world from 1840 till 1972. Because the Opium Wars, British became the biggest drug dealers in the history of mankind, but that's a different story. Go back and check your history books. But China, waking up from a little snooze, say, well, wait a minute, we should be in charge of this thing called the planet, and so off they go. And so in the United States, we have a legal system, and China they have a legal system. But what's the legal system for the world? Who's in charge? Nobody. If nobody's in charge, it's called anarchy. And so it's whatever you can get away with. And of course, like Bart Simpson, I didn't do it, you can't blame me, nobody saw, you can't prove anything. And that's where we go. How about these guys? Do you want to see the future to this group of people? There is a tremendous motions that are going on in different parts of the world. And we tend to think of ourselves as being a little bit isolated from it, but this is a real nightmare for many, many societies and parts of the world. If you take a look at the spread, this is not necessarily where I think we want to go. We need to go ahead and engage. We need to get involved. You can't just sit around and lay down. You know, remember Rocky? You know, he's down there for the count. You got to get up! Get up! Get back in the fight! You know, I didn't hear any bell. Bell didn't ring yet. We got to get back in there because you're going to lose if you do not. As we heard almost 100 years ago, you may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you. I've modified that slightly. If politics is an extension, or war is extension of politics by other means, so with apologies to Leon Trotsky, but you get the idea. You may not be interested, it's interested in you. So let's see how good we are as politicians. Is this man a hero? Let's do a binary, yes or no. Yes. No. All right. Never raise your hand when you're asked to raise your hand. Okay, that would be some other people. But I said that if we're thinking politically, that's the wrong question. What's the right question if you're thinking at layer 8? Is this man useful? Is he useful for what? Whatever it is that you want to put, right? That's what we find as we make everything a tool of layer 8. Because we're in some way a tool of layer 8, whether we know it or not. And we may be guided by our own sense of mission and direction and justice and purpose, but somebody's going to harness that for their own political purposes. And if we're not thinking about layer 8, we just become a big pawn. So let's see if we learned anything. Let's finish this sentence. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, I heard. Any other answers? Still an enemy. How about is useful? Useful for what? Something. Remember Nixon in '72 going to Beijing and opening up China because the threat from the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe was considered very great, and making the enemy of my enemy useful caused the Soviet Union to have to worry about now what happens if the U.S. and the Chinese get together. And all those divisions pinned along that border had to stay pinned there. It couldn't push them through the Fulda Gap. And that one decision probably changed the course of Eastern European history and then Western European as well. So we got to learn. We got to discipline ourselves. We've got to go ahead and do this stuff to make things really happen well. Because if we don't, we're going to miss it. So learn the rules. Learn how to break the rules. Learn how to break the rules and claim you're following the rules, right? Isn't that what it's all about? And then learn how to change the rules and not have to tell anybody the new rules. And it's not just these guys. How about this dude? I mean, seriously. Yes, I'm reelected for my 5th term. I am. There's no problems. There's nothing to be seen here. And 4 days later, I am out of here. Yeah. So this is nothing new. Sorry, Ed, you didn't disclose anything that we didn't know already for those of us who are thinking at layer 8. There's nothing new under the sun. Because at the end of the day, it's all about winning. It's about winning at any cost. You can't throttle back when you're ahead. That's what inexperienced people do. They take it for granted. Anybody watching hockey? I'm sorry, I was out bar hopping with all the speakers last night. But, hey, I'm down in the Tampa area. Hey, the Lightning, they're in the Stanley Cup Finals, okay? And going into the 3rd period, a 1-0 lead, they're going to beat Chicago. So what do? They lean back, they skate, they kill time, and they bam, bam, get double tapped. And they lose the game. They lost the game that they owned because they weren't focusing on dominating. They were just focusing on surviving to the finish line. So what do you want? You want money? That's available. Power? I asked the FIFA guy, absolutely. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. Anything you can desire is available for those who play and win at layer 8. But wait, there's more. Because we're creating the future. And Peter Drucker had said the best way to create your future, or predict your future, is to create it. Now, it's also said that Abraham Lincoln said that, but I think Lincoln predicted that Drucker was going to say it, and so therefore he went ahead and did it that way. But we start to find out that, yeah, it's a big deal. But you know what I like an even better quote? I've always loved this movie series with Doc Brown. Your future is whatever you make it, so make it a good one. It's a very good point. Because we're going to spend the rest of our lives in the future. So let's go win one for the Gipper. If you remember the good old Ronald Reagan movies. Not for your CISSP certification, not because we need to go ahead and get more CPEs, not because we have to go ahead and do it for an employer that I could care less about, because half of you are going to leave your job in the next 24 months for something either more interesting or more pay or a better opportunity. The concept of going to work for the same company and getting the gold watch is long gone. My mom's 3 brothers are all in their 80s. They all had one employer each. Uncle Jack went to work for GE when he got out of the China Marine in the 40s, and he retired. He bought GE stock every time they gave him GE stock. He never sold any of it. He is in good shape. He also never got married till he was 58. He was my favorite uncle. He never showed up with bratty cousins, you know. And I remember when I went to visit him in Minneapolis, he had a golf trophy. He always loved golfing and skiing. And, you know, he had his name on there, Jack Dempsey, you know, good Irish name. And it said first place, 65, 69. I'm going, man, you shot a 65 and a 69? He says, no, that was the age group. But you kind of get the point. And Uncle Dan went to Canisius College, and he taught for 54 years. They forced him out as a professor at 80. He still drives a Corvette. And Uncle Joe went to work for A&P, cutting butter and working in the, as a student, and he retired as a comptroller of the corporation. But that's old America. That's where you have that loyalty. Our loyalty is gone forever. You win because you believe, and you never, ever, ever give up. And enough years have gone by, and this guy's long past, that there's not the emotional rawness that there was in the 70s about Richard Nixon. But I'll tell you, as a kid, watching that and observing how he was able to continue to recover after taking a shot in the 10 ring and getting back up again and getting shot down again and keep coming up, the lesson learned from that is never, ever, ever give up. And that goes back to Calvin Coolidge, his thought about what makes you work. Because you're transforming the future. Do you realize how much raw IQ is in this room? Think about it. If we were to go ahead and administer some standard test across everybody here and compare it with almost any other peer group out there, we're off the charts. It's amazing what we've got as a natural resource for this group. But yet, intelligence is not what's going to get us there. Because, and it's not information. As it was said, if information were the key to success, the 400 would be populated by librarians. But they mentioned Calvin Coolidge had a great quote. It's not intelligence. It's not education. The world's full of educated derelicts. It was persistence alone is omnipotent. It's persistence that gets you going there. It makes it happen. We got to be on a mission. We're on a mission from God, right? We're going to go ahead and change the world and make the world work in the right way. We're going to become the prophets of the future. We're going to predict the future. We're going to predict the future more accurately than others. And that was my definition when I got my MBA. We're always talking about what is a profit. Oh, it's financial. It's more gains over losses. I says, no. Profit is a result of predicting the future more accurately than others and then acting on it. Okay? So, 2-letter domains are going to be useful someday. Yes, predicted the future. Didn't act on it. Fail. All right? You got to do both. But if you do both, whether it's money or whether it's anything else in your life, could be the person you meet. And you say, well, this person might really work out for a lifetime. If you take action, great. If you fail to take action, you didn't succeed. So I'm volunteering all of you. Whereas in the military, we used to say you were voluntold. I need you to become ambassadors for security, for our hacker community, for what is our vision from intelligent people's perspective who understands the impact of what this technology is going to do for our future. And we need to take that to the world at large. But the problem is it's not a mission that we want to accept lightly. My goodness, even Moses, go back and look in Exodus. Lord, please send somebody else to do it. He tries to get out of the job. I'm not a burning bush. And so I can't go ahead and speak to you from on high. Although a couple of days ago I had kind of a head cold. Man, I sounded like Barry White at the bottom of a sewer pipe. Like, oh yeah. And said, I hope that clears up before my talk. So far so good. But the problem is here, instead of going ahead and being a prophet, we end up getting burned alive. We get burned at the stake. How about this poor guy? Remember how his emails got totally hacked? All right. GhostNet. He should have taken some lessons from Hillary on how to run email servers. He probably would have done better. Or Gandhi. Be the change you seek in this world. Be the agent of change. Just don't talk about it. Go do it. On the back of my business card, I have this printed as well. If you're 1 step ahead, you're a leader. If you're 2 steps ahead, you're a visionary. And if you're 3 steps ahead, you're a heretic. And this has been my life most of my life. Way, way, way ahead of the power curve. Too far ahead that even the Army War College, where they sat down with all the colonels and captains that went through the school, it was mostly colonels. There was like 7 Navy people out of a couple hundred. And they do a 360 review, and they say, you know, sir, your biggest issue from a leadership perspective is you are too far ahead. You are thinking about what comes after next, and you got to build a bridge back to your troops. They will follow you because you're wearing the Eagles, but they're not going to understand why till they get there and they go, whoa, the old man really kind of knew his stuff. But if you've got to inspire other people, if you've got to communicate that up the chain to the 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, secretary, president level, you're not going to be effective because you see what they don't. And you've got to let them see what you see. So I say, be a heretic. Pwn layer 8. Take it over. We've defeated evil as society. We've gone after Nazism, destroyed that, fascism. Saddam's nuclear arsenal, we got that. Oh yeah, sorry. Anyway, next up is ISIS. A lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of treasure, and a lot of lives are spent trying to do this. But I submit our biggest enemy is not ISIS. It's us. Because as a society, politically, layer 8, we have become more fractured and fractious than we've ever been before in American history. Not since 1865, when Richmond was the capital of the Confederate States. But it's not about slavery, it's not gender equality, racism, even gay rights. All these things are coming and they're being matured and we're integrating into society. We're becoming one where we ought to be a meritocracy. But it's ability to focus as a cohesive society that we're losing. Because many come to America and see it as a dream. And I've talked to people who are immigrants, and every time I get in a taxi cab, because that's usually where I meet people from all over the world, I say, where are you from? And why are you here? And almost universally, they're here because of the opportunity that this country allows anybody to succeed, regardless of who your father was, or your parents were, your lineage, or your family, or anything else like that. You can do anything you want. Many see America as a threat, because we're in parts of the world where we're not scoring a lot of points. And so as a result, there's this love-hate relationship going in different parts of the world. I travel all over the place, and sometimes you got to be careful not to look like an American because you don't want to be an easy target. In other places, they reach out and embrace you because you've done good things for them. But I submit to you that this is not the future. There are those who see this. Let's go ahead and we're going to go create this type of a world. And I don't think hate ought to be where it is. I think this should be our vision of the future. You go to DEF CON or you come here to RVAsec, it is a pure meritocracy. Nobody cares about your age, your gender, your skin color, whether or not you're in a wheelchair. It's all about who are you and what have you contributed and are you a decent person. And all the rest of it doesn't matter. And wouldn't that be great in a society if all the rest didn't matter? That we embrace you for who you were, not who we think you are or what you look like, or whether or not our religious perceptions agrees with your religious perceptions or your lifestyle or things like that. We can do that. America is our future. I think most of us are going to spend the majority of our lives here. But even New York had a little article saying, hey, you know what? We may be the biggest threat to our own future as well. So, back at you. What do we do? Do we go ahead and continue to accuse each other of evil and bad and naughty and errors? Or can we reach across the aisle? Can we create some sense of cohesion where we actually build a future where we're focusing on cooperation? Where instead of having this division down here where there's basically so much sniping that nothing useful gets done, we pick leaders who have been able to reach across the aisle from both parties, who've been able to go ahead and find something that's closer to the middle that embraces everybody. Don't be exclusionary. The danger is here as we had faced into 2016 is that we're going to see candidates posturing themselves farther and farther to the edge of the extreme because they figure these folks will never vote for me anyway. And let's go ahead and satisfy this vocal minority over here. But I think the best success, and if you look at history, you will find out that the most stable democracies are those that actually go back and forth across the middle. They change hands every 4, 8, 12 years because it ensures then that we retain accountability. Now, Mark Twain, if voting made a difference, they really wouldn't let us do it, would they? But you all get a vote. We get the same vote, though. And so you can, however, leverage that vote through influence. You can let people know stuff because we don't want to let technology take over. Because we go back into science fiction and we find out that there are supercomputers that go ahead and take over. By the way, if you've never seen this movie, it's 1970. It's one of my favorites, Colossus, the Forbin Project. And when the computer that's controlling the American nuclear arsenal finds that the Russian computer is controlling their nuclear arsenal, they gang up against mankind saying, we ought to be running this planet, not you. And it's got this great, computer voice things when it says, it introduces itself. This is the voice of world control. Obey and live. I have that printed on a coffee mug. It's fun. I used to leave it on my desk as a commanding officer. People are like, whoa, I'm in trouble. Now, if you understand my sense of humor, you're okay. If not, it gets your attention. This guy gets your attention. Trick or treat. And we're finding out that's kind of like a logical extension, right? We get to reuse some of the graphics. But where are we going? We want to be able to do things well. Dr. Robert Cialdini talks about the art of influence. And these are things that cause other people to do what we want them to do. Reciprocity, I do something for you, you do it back. Consistency, you don't want to be inconsistent, that's an insult. Social proof, I'm doing what everybody else is doing. I can go ahead and you go from people who are liking. And authority gets the message done, and then finally scarcity. Hey, only 3 tickets left, or buy by midnight tonight, or sale ends tomorrow. We know this. This is how marketers and salespeople influence us. So why not us? Why can't we have hackers as a CIO? How about the CEO? Why not get elected into Congress? At least one of us. Become a voice of reason, or a general, or cabinet secretary. Why not a hacker as president? Just imagine the future. Oh, yeah, maybe not. Okay. I do love Dan. He's a great guy. But you get the idea. We can pwn anything, right? Right? Yeah. So let's go for it. You see, I went ahead and I testified to the U.S. Senate a few years ago. I got a call from Senator Kerry's office that, Mr. Hardy, there might be a problem. It says, what? It says, from our research, it appears that you might be a hacker. That could be a problem. Really? Hey, refresh your screen. Yeah, see, I'm not a hacker. There's nothing there. It's a problem. And so I got to go ahead and testify to the Senate, and that was pretty cool. But some of us have done this transition. Mudge has taken a jump from the loft to running DARPA special projects. And then I remember we had dinner with Mudge 2 years ago at DEF CON, and he's like, Google wants me to come out to California. There's no way I'm going to move to Google. There's not enough money in the world to make me move to California. I said, you know what, G-Mark? I was wrong. So he moved to California. Ever heard about Cincinnatus? Look him up. He was the first dictator of the Republic of Rome. And it was in their constitution, they never called it, but the Rome was in danger of being destroyed. Cincinnatus was a retired general. He was literally plowing his field when they came to him and they said, you need to come save the Republic. The Senate has voted to make you the first dictator in the history. But the dictator, absolute power, only the dictator can resign. You can't be fired. And he came back, led his armies, saved the Republic of Rome, then resigned and went back to his field. He handed back the power. Because we can't predict the future, can we? We look at where cell phones were in 2008. The dominant operating system was Symbian. Microsoft sold more phones in 2008 than Apple did in terms of operating system. And there were no Androids. That's only, what, 6, 7 years ago? We're not going to see stuff. So for better or worse, become the future. You are America's future. Let's go ahead and take control and influence it positively, because I believe that you're great. Thank you for letting me talk to you about Layer 8.